You will not believe exactly how Donald Trump just completely crushed Gavin Newsom. The crowd laughed directly in his face. Sit in the chair, Gavin. You can't. 7 words. That was all it took. Donald Trump said them quietly, almost gently, and then he sat down. And the governor of California stood there beside an empty folding chair he could not bring himself to sit in front of 200 people, and could not find a single word to say back. His famous smile was halfway up his face, and it had stopped there. Just stopped. The mouth still curved, the eyes already somewhere else. A smile with nobody home behind it. He was trying to make the thing he was best at, the smile, the ease, the talk work one more time, and it would not start. Somebody near the snack bar laughed. Then the rest of them did. Here is exactly how a sitting governor lost a room to a folding chair nobody was sitting in. It started about 40 minutes earlier, when Gavin Newsom still believed this room belonged to him. A town hall in the Fresno County Fairground Hall, the metal building they use for livestock auctions. Cameras 3 networks deep along the back wall. Farm country, a room full of farmers and mechanics and truck drivers, including a man named Earl in a feed cap who had closed his repair shop 40 miles out to drive in, though nobody knew that yet, and nobody would until much later. Newsom arrived the way he always arrived, like the building was lucky to have him. And he took the floor to open. And he opened by telling that crowd exactly what he thought of them. "Let me say something honest before we start the show," Newsom said, "because that's what this is, a show. I get it. There are people in this room who think the future scares me. It doesn't. What scares me is standing still." He smiled out at them. Warm, generous. "I love a place like this, I do. But I have to be honest with you. There are folks here still driving the same gas truck their daddy drove. Still think a climate plan is something a city dreamed up to bother them. Still waiting for a California that left about 30 years ago." He spread his hands. "I'm not going to lie and tell you California is the past. I am the future of this country. And the future doesn't wait for the back row to catch up." A sound moved through the room. Not a boo. Something quieter and harder than a boo. It was the sound a room makes when it has just decided something about a man and is keeping it to itself. He had just told a hall full of farmers and mechanics in the middle of farm country that they were the thing the future was waiting to leave behind. And he had done it with a smile. And he believed it landed. It landed. Just not where he thought. Donald Trump did not react to the insult. He sat with one arm over the back of the empty chair beside him, the way you rest your arm on a chair when you are saving it for somebody. He let Newsom finish. He let the applause Newsom expected fail to show up. He let the quiet sit there a second too long. And then he reached over, took that empty folding chair, and dragged it, scraping across the concrete until it sat square between the two of them facing the room. He did not explain it. He just left it there. "Beautiful opening," Trump said. "Really? The hair, the jacket, the future, the whole thing. Has the best at it? I mean that." He let it hang. "Before I say anything, I want to hear you say one thing, Gavin, in your own words, so nobody can tell me later I made it up. The rules, the ones you're so famous for, do they apply to everybody? Or just some people?" Newsom, who could never turn down a question that let him sound principled, leaned right into it. "Everyone," he said. "That's the whole point, Senator. We are all in this together. The rules apply to everyone. No exceptions. That is not weakness, that is leadership. That is what it means to ask a state to sacrifice as one. Everyone. No exceptions." Trump nodded slowly, and he reached out and touched the back of the empty chair with 2 fingers. Light, almost gentle, the way you touch something you are about to use. "That's a beautiful promise. The prettiest thing you've said all day. I'm going to hold you to it. Hold that thought, Gavin. Hold it real tight, because I brought a few people who would like to hold you to it too. They couldn't all make it today. That's kind of the whole point. He patted the empty seat once and left his hand resting on it, and the trap closed its first inch without a sound. And Newsom, who had walked into it on his own 2 feet, leaned back in his chair, satisfied, certain he had just won the exchange. "Let's start with somebody who isn't here," Trump said. "A woman up in this valley. Modesto, somewhere up that way. November 2020. Her mother passed, 81 years old, in a care home, and the daughter got to say goodbye through a window, because that was the rule. And then she went to bury her. And because of your order, your no gatherings, no exceptions, all in this together rule, she put her own mother in the ground, with about 9 people in the room, and a sheriff's deputy in the parking lot counting cars. He let that sit. She did what you told her to the letter. She didn't hug her own sister at the grave. That's how much she believed you. That's how much these people believed you." He put his hand flat on the empty chair. "And that same month, that same week, you were at a restaurant called the French Laundry. Fanciest place in the state. $400 a plate. Inside, no mask, 12 people shoulder to shoulder, laughing. And the people on either side of you weren't even family, Gavin. They were lobbyists. The people who pay to get things out of you." He looked at the empty chair, then at Newsom. "So this seat right here," Trump said, "I want you to imagine it's hers. The woman who buried her mother by your rules the same week you broke them over a $400 dinner. Everyone. No exceptions. Except you. You were the exception. You are always the exception." The laugh came then. The first real one. It rolled up from the back near the snack bar and broke against the stage. And a man in the second row lost the fight and covered his mouth, his shoulders going. And even one of the moderators had to look hard at her notes. A woman buried her own mother by his rules the same week he was maskless at a $400 dinner with lobbyists. Newsom's jaw set, but he was good. He was very good. And he came back fast. "I apologized for that dinner. I stood in front of this entire state, and I owned it. I said, I made a mistake. Have you ever, one time in your gold-plated life, apologized for anything? Anything at all? At least I know the word." His voice had its old strength back now, and it filled the metal building. And for a moment, the room moved with him, because there is real power in a man saying he was sorry. It held for about 20 seconds, and it might have held longer. Down at the press table, something happened that only a few people caught. A young staffer in a lanyard came in fast, through the side door, crouched at Newsom's elbow, whispered one sentence in his ear, and slid a folded note under the edge of his water bottle before she went back out as quick as she came. Newsom did not look at it, but his hand moved to the note and rested there, flat, the way a man keeps his hand on a thing he is afraid to open in front of cameras. Whatever was on that paper, he kept it under his palm for the rest of the afternoon, and he never did read it where anyone could see. But Trump did not reach for the apology, because the apology was the trap he had not bothered to set, the one Newsom walked into on his own. "You did apologize." "You're right." Trump nodded, almost kind. "You got caught, you went on television, you said the word. Very moving. Here's my problem with sorry, Gavin. Sorry is for when you stop." He tapped the empty chair. "You didn't stop. You said sorry for the dinner, and then you kept right on being the exception. Let me put somebody else in the chair." He gestured at it like he was introducing a guest. "A father right here in this valley. 2020, 2021. Your schools closed. Public schools locked all over the state. His kids staring at a laptop for a year, falling behind the way the poor kids always fall behind worst. No tutor. No quiet room. Bad internet. A whole year of a child's life gone." He let it breathe. "And where were your 4 kids, Gavin? In a classroom. In person. at their private school, with a teacher in a room, like kids are supposed to be. He set his hand on the empty seat. And then you went on CNN on national television and called yourself a Zoom school parent, a Zoom parent, while your own 4 children had been sitting in a real classroom for months. Everyone, no exceptions, except your kids. Your kids got the exception that man's kid never had. That is a deliberate distortion of Newsom said, and his voice climbed. It's a video, Gavin. You're on the tape. We can roll it right now. The room broke. Not a chuckle this time. A real, rolling, helpless laugh. The kind that takes a crowd and won't give it back. The kind that builds on itself. People laughing at the thing, and then at each other laughing. Earl in the feed cap shook his head with a grin he couldn't have stopped at gunpoint. And the younger man beside him, who'd walked in with his arms crossed, was laughing too. And then a voice came from the second row. Not loud, but it carried, because the room had gone quiet enough to hear it. A woman had stood up. She'd been on the list to ask a question. An ordinary woman in an ordinary cardigan, a kid's school photo in a plastic sleeve in her hand. And her voice shook, but she did not sit back down. Governor, I cut hair. I have a chair in a shop on Blackstone. She held up the photo. When you closed the schools, I had my daughter on a phone screen at the back of the shop between customers, because if I stopped working, we didn't eat. She lost a year. She still reads behind. Her voice steadied. Your kids had a school to go back to. Mine had the back of a hair shop. So don't you tell me this was about keeping children safe. Don't you tell me that. She sat down. Nobody laughed at that one. That one went down somewhere deeper than a laugh, into the part of a room that decides things, and every eye in the building swung to the governor to see what a man even says to that. A mother whose daughter lost a year of school, standing up to a man whose children never missed a day. Newsom looked at her. And for the first time all afternoon, he had nothing ready. He opened his mouth. He closed it. The smile came back on, but it came back wrong, half a second too late. The way a porch light flickers before it goes out. The man who always had a word did not have one. Trump let the silence do the work. He was better at silence than people expected. He took a slow sip of his own water and set the glass down with a small, deliberate click. And the click was the only sound in that metal building for 3 long seconds. I could stop here, Trump said. I want you to hear me say it. The dinner, the school, if that was all of it, I'd stop, because everybody makes mistakes. I've made plenty. They write whole books about mine. A ripple of friendly laughter on his side now. But this isn't a mistake, Gavin. A mistake happens once. This is a habit. And these people earned the right to have somebody put it in one chair where they can see it. Let me put the next one in. He turned the empty chair a few degrees, like he was making room. A mechanic, Trump said. A man who fixes trucks for a living, like half this room. California has the highest gas prices in the entire United States of America. Not close. $1.50 a gallon more than the people one state over for the same exact gallon. He fills a work truck twice a week, so that's money off his table every single week that the fella across the state line just gets to keep for nothing, for living somewhere else. He held a hand toward the chair. And then you signed the order that says, by the year 2035, he can't even buy a new gas truck anymore. The average electric one runs $66,000. He does not have $66,000, Gavin. Nobody in this row has $66,000 sitting around. You think the bank in Fresno hands that out to a man who fixes trucks? He paused, and his hand came to rest on the back of the empty seat. But here's the part for the chair. You tell that man to give up his truck to save the planet. You burn more carbon getting to this fairground than he burns in a year of honest work. Everyone, no exceptions. Except the man on the private plane telling the man with the work truck to walk. Newsom pulled the microphone close and came back hard. And give him this. The polish fell off, and something real came up underneath. You want to talk about the planet like it's a punchline? Fine. Let's talk about the kids in this valley breathing wildfire smoke every single fall. The towns that burned all the way to the ground. The families who lost everything they owned in an afternoon. I will not apologize. Not to you, not to anyone, for trying to leave these children a world that is still livable. You can stand there and count pennies at a gas pump and call it leadership. I am trying to save something bigger than a fuel receipt. His voice climbed, full and certain. And I came up from a kid with dyslexia who couldn't read a page right. I built businesses with my own hands. I made payroll. I signed the front of a check while you were inheriting buildings from your father. I have fought for working people in this state every day of my life. And you want to reduce all of that. A whole life, a whole state, to an empty chair and a stack of paper you printed this morning to make a video for people who will never know my name and never want to. His voice cracked, and it was not all an act. Not all of it. So no, I will not sit here and be turned into a clip. I am the governor of California. I earned this chair, and it was good. For a moment, it was genuinely good. Some heat came back to his side. A pen or two stopped moving for about 10 seconds. It looked like he might climb out on the strength of his own voice, the way he always had in every room before this one. He swung as hard as he could swing, and for 10 seconds it almost worked, because the man can talk. Nobody ever said he couldn't talk. Trump let him finish. He let the whole thing land. And then he did the thing that took the gloves off for real, and the showman went quiet. And the quiet was worse than any shout. You earned that chair, Trump said softly. So the room leaned in. I believe you. The dyslexia. The kid who couldn't read all the way up to running the 5th biggest economy on Earth. That's a real story. Id. Shake your hand for it. In any parking lot in America. He let it sit. And then his voice went flat and level and cold. That's not what's on trial. What's on trial is this chair, because there is one more person I want to put in it. And then I am done. And I want the cameras on this seat when I say it. He stood, and he walked around the long table, slow, in no hurry at all. And he put one hand on the back of the empty folding chair, and for the first time all afternoon, he was not talking to Newsom. He had turned his back on the governor of California entirely. He was talking to the room, to the back row, to the people in the folding chairs, and the people standing along the wall. There's a man sleeping under the overpass on Highway 99 tonight, Trump said. You drove past him to get here. I drove past him too. Cardboard, a shopping cart, a dog, on a rope. Over 5 years, your state spent $24 billion to get that man off the street. 24 billion with a B. He let the number land. And your own auditor, your person, not mine, went looking for where it went. You know what they found? Nothing. No records. The state didn't even keep track of its own money. $24 billion, and they cannot tell you what it bought. Not a building, not a bed, nothing you can point to. He let it breathe. And in those same 5 years, homelessness in California went up 32%. In Sacramento, where you live, 67%. Half the people in this entire country sleeping on a sidewalk tonight are doing it in your state, the richest state in the richest country on earth. And that man still sleeps under the 99. And $24 billion went somewhere. And it was not to him. He pulled the empty chair out from the table, turned it to face Newsom directly, and stepped back from it. So, here is the last one, Gavin. This chair is all of them. The woman who buried her mother, the kid who lost a year of school, the man who sold his truck, the man under the 99 with the dog on the rope. Every one of them did exactly what you told them to do. They sat down, they sacrificed, they waited their turn. They trusted you with $24 billion. His voice dropped, and the folks see was all the way gone now. And what was under it was flat and cold and certain, and not one time, not one single time in all of it, did you sit in the chair with them. You wrote the rule, and you stepped over it every time. The dinner, the school, the plane. You never believed a word of it, Gavin. You just needed them to. He gestured at the empty seat. So go ahead. Sit in it. Sit in the chair. Live 1 week under the rules you wrote for these people. 1 week. The schools, the gas, the dinner you're not allowed to have, the help that never comes. He waited. Go on. Newsom looked at the chair. It was an ordinary chair. Gray metal, a little bent. The kind they stack 100 deep in a closet behind a stage like this one. And the whole room was looking at it now, too. This empty folding chair turned to face him, and they were waiting the way a room waits when it already knows the answer and just wants to watch you find it. And he did the thing he had done 10,000 times, the thing that had never once failed him, the thing that was him. He reached for the smile. He started to bring it up. The easy one, the camera one, the one that says it is all going to be fine, folks, trust me, I've got this. He needed it now more than he had ever needed it in his life, and it started to come, and it stopped halfway up. It froze on his face. His hand drifting toward his own collar and stalling there in the air, while the hot stage lights caught the gel in his hair and held it like a coin. A smile with nobody home behind it, held up in front of 200 people who had all at the exact same second stopped being afraid of him. He did not sit in the chair. He could not. And every single person in that building watched him not be able to sit in the chair. Gavin, Trump said quietly, you can't. The same 7 words you heard at the start of this. Now you know what they cost him. They did what 10,000 would not have. Newsom reached for his water bottle instead, the way a man reaches for anything when his hands need a job. And his hand was not steady. Every camera caught that it was not steady. And he set the bottle back down without drinking, both hands carefully, the way you set down a thing you no longer trust. He folded his hands. He said nothing at all. The moderator cleared her throat into the quiet and asked formally whether the governor wished to respond. He did not wish to respond. That, right there, the smile that froze on the face of the most polished man in American politics, in front of an empty chair he could not sit in a metal building full of people he had called the back row. By the time it was over, the clip already had a name, and the name was not kind to him. Somebody had cut it clean. Trump turning the empty chair to face him. Sit in the chair. You can't. The smile freezing. The bottle going down with 2 hands, and set it loose. And by that night, you could not scroll for 10 seconds on any screen in America without it surfacing again. The evening broadcasts led with the still frame. Newsom on his feet beside the empty seat, hands stalled at his collar, the smile half on and the eyes already gone, and that gray folding chair turned to face him like a question he could not answer. One network ran it under a chyron that was nothing but those 7 words, plain white letters, on a black field. No commentary, because none was needed. Another just froze on the chair itself, empty, and let it sit there on screen for a long 3 seconds, while the anchor said nothing. The words did the work. The empty chair did the rest. And here was the part that should have scared him most, if he could feel anything yet besides the heat in his face. People were not arguing about it. They were not fighting about climate or COVID or schools or any of the big things he had wanted that afternoon to be about. There was nothing left to argue. They were watching a man who told everyone else to sit down and sacrifice, get asked to sit in one chair himself, and not be able to do it, on a loop, forever. And laughing. And here is the thing he understood in the half-second it took the laugh to reach him. The thing you cannot undo. Once a room stops being afraid of you, you do not get the fear back. You can give 100 more speeches. It does not come back. There is no apology for it. There is no second take. In the gravel lot outside, a reporter caught a Democratic state lawmaker who had voted with Newsom for years, on nearly everything: the budget, the bills, the long nights. The man did not want his name used, and he looked both ways across the lot before he said it, the way men in that line of work always do before they tell the truth. Then he said it anyway, low and fast. "Everybody saw this coming," he said. "Everybody in Sacramento has been writing checks the rest of us cover for him for years, because that's what you do for your own, even when your own makes it hard. But you cannot cover an empty chair. There's no statement, no press release, no apology tour that unlaughs once it's laughed." He shook his head and almost smiled, and there was something tired in it. Hell learned that this week. We all did, watching it. You only get to be the exception until somebody puts a chair in front of you. And he walked off into the dark before the recorder came up. The woman who cut hair drove back to her shop on Blackstone with the school photo on the seat beside her. She did not turn the radio on. She had said the thing she came to say in front of the cameras, and the governor and God and everybody, her hands shaking the whole time, and she had said it anyway. And she would think about that for a long time. The next morning, a regular would set a phone on the counter, the clip already playing, and say, "That's you. That's you on there." And she would just nod and keep cutting, because there was nothing left to add to it. A young woman who had worked on the governor's own staff for 3 years watched the clip alone in her apartment that night, 4 times, and then she set the phone face down on the table and did not pick it back up. It wasn't the politics. She had signed up for the politics. It was the chair, the way he looked at it and could not sit down. She had spent 3 years writing words for that smile, and she had watched it die on live television in front of a folding chair. And she understood the way you understand a thing in your stomach before your head catches up, that she would be looking for new work by Friday. She was right. Earl, in the feed cap, drove the 40 miles home in the dark, back to the shop he had closed for the day. And somewhere past the last streetlight with nobody to see him, he started laughing again, alone in the cab of his truck, at the memory of a man who told a whole valley to sit down and sacrifice, and could not sit in one folding chair himself. He laughed until his eyes stung. Then he wiped them with the back of his hand and kept driving home to a town some man in a nice jacket had called the back row. And Donald Trump, for his part, did the thing nobody expected, which was a small thing. Before he left the stage, he pushed the empty chair back in square to the table. "Neat, the way you leave a chair when you are done with a room." He did not say anything else about it. He walked out past the cameras, past the reporters calling his name, past the place where the governor of California had finally, after all these years, run clean out of things to say. He had come in with one empty chair. He left it exactly where everyone could see it. And out on Highway 99, under the overpass, a man with a shopping cart and a dog on a rope never saw the clip and never would. He did not have a phone to see it on. He did not know that for one afternoon in a metal building 40 minutes south, a folding chair had been turned to face the most powerful man in California and called his name. He just pulled his cardboard a little tighter against the cold coming off the concrete, and the cars went by over his head all night, the way they always did. And $24 billion was still out there somewhere, and not 1 cent of it had ever found its way to him.